Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk spoke to MEPs at the Parliament in Strasbourg today. Poland's the current rotating head of the EU Council for the next 6 months, and Tusk laid out his country's priorities.
Today, if the US president tells us that we need to shoulder more responsibility for our security, we should take it as a positive challenge. We need to continue to speak with one voice, but also ensure that our actions are in unison. The time has come for Europe to act.
We're going to talk more about Tusk's speech with our Europe editor, Armin Georgian, who joins me on this set. Armin, what sort of tone was Tusk trying to strike here today?
Well, I think the point he was making there, Jeannie, was that Europe should spend more on defense, not because Trump tells them to, but because it's in Europe's own interest. And of course, that's something that other EU leaders have been saying for a long time. He pointed out that Poland is now, it's actually slightly short of 5% of its GDP spending on defense. It's about 4.7, or going to be that this year. That is well ahead of several NATO members. So he's kind of, I think this speech was sort of a rallying call, really, to get NATO members to spend more on their defense, but that 5% figure is out of reach right now for a lot of countries. Having said that, the spending situation on defense has changed dramatically. I mean, if you go back to 2014, there were only 3 NATO allies that met their own obligations on defense spending. Now it's 23 members, so that's well over half of NATO members. Of course, all that doesn't stop Donald Trump from saying that Europe isn't paying its fair share, which perhaps had a grain of truth when he was president the first time around, but it's much more difficult for Trump to make that sort of case now because, as I say, spending has actually gone up a lot among NATO members.
In the meantime, the Polish presidency of the EU does see itself as very pro-European. Is it going to get all of Europe to speak with one voice?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly sees this presidency as a return to what it would call the European family after a Hungarian presidency that was very controversial, where Hungary's EU colleagues felt that it was not playing for the European team. I was talking about all this to an MEP the other day who's a member of a party that is in the governing coalition in Poland with Donald Tusk. Let's take a listen to him now.
We represent one of the most pro-European societies. We believe in Europe. We believe that together, in solidarity with other member states, we can achieve a lot concerning not only defense security, but food security, digital security, employment security, all the agricultural security.
So that's kind of the official laying out of, you know, why Poland is such a great EU presidency, a bit of PR there in a way. But what's going to be really hard, Jeannie, is, well, firstly on Ukraine to get everybody to a common position and to make Europe count when Trump's peace plan, or whatever it is, actually is unveiled. That's obviously difficult because it's not just people like Viktor Orban and Robert Fico who have a different view from the European mainstream. Now you've got even President Macron of France saying things like Ukraine needs to hold what he called a realistic discussion on territorial issues. That's not the kind of statement that plays well in France's, let's say, EU and NATO allies in the Baltic states, right? So Ukraine is going to be a huge challenge, but even on some of the other things Tusk mentioned in this speech, to kind of revisit the Green Deal, to undo some of the legal aspects of the Green Deal, which was the big landmark legislation of the last European Commission, or to review car emissions targets, to kind of deregulate more, to lessen the burden of regulation. All of this is not the kind of thing that certain political forces in the European Parliament will have welcomed, and there's people there that are really kind of putting up a fight now to maintain the kind of green agenda, if you will, the regulatory agenda, the climate change agenda as it was set out in the first European Commission. So I think even on those issues, the Polish presidency, which we have to say is led by someone from the Conservative Party, the European People's Party, which is the main centre-right bloc in the EU, that's going to be a challenge too.